Classical versus Romantic music. This article compares two important periods of Western classical music. Could one period have more to offer the performer and the listener, or are they equal in their musical offerings? Let's find out. Before the classical period was the Baroque period of music with composers like Bach, Handel, Vivaldi, and Couperin. Following the classical period came what was known as the Romantic period. With the dawn of the 20th century, the world witnessed the birth of the modern period of music. The classical period stretched from 1750 to 1830, while the Romantic period lasted between 1830 and 1900. Periods of classical music reflect the age in which they existed. Culture, economics, society, and politics governed music's development. Each period of music relied on the one that preceded it, even though, at times, the new period was completely different from the one before it. The classical period's common musical and social conventions traveled through the Romantic period and enabled new ideas to flourish. Music of the classical period then reflected the Baroque but rejected it. The gilt-edged, ornate opulence of the Baroque was disapproved in favor of a rather more modest musical model. Likewise, the Romantic period moved away from elegance. It measured control of the classical period towards increasingly larger and more complex music to express the great range of human emotions. This change in focus is key to understanding another difference between the periods of music. Classical music was highly expressive and communicative, but the Romantic composers drew greater emphasis on the human condition and struggle. What connected the classical and Romantic periods were instrumental groupings. Many ensembles of the classical period were carried through and developed during the Romantic period. The orchestra, for example, was firmly established in the classical period and continued to enjoy favor in the Romantic period. The difference was in the number of performers. Even in the late symphonic works of Haydn, the composer did not call more than 50 performers. In contrast, the late Romantic symphonic works require more than 100 performers. The piano continued to be one of the most popular instruments, solo and in the concerto's orchestral setting. Piano trios, quartets, and quintets also thrived through both periods of music. In addition, as an ensemble, the full choir, soprano, alto, tenor, bass, continued to be the focus of many extraordinary works through both periods. There were significant developments in the instruments across both periods of musical history. The piano began in the times of Mozart and Haydn. Woodwind instruments developed more complex keywork to cope with the demands of classical composers. Brass instruments established valve systems that brought a greater range and technical possibilities that natural instruments could not offer. These steps forward were furthered significantly in the Romantic period. They encouraged the rise of the virtuoso performer, who became the struggling hero during this era. From the orchestra, choir, piano, and string quartets came very different types of musical composition during these periods in music. The symphony began in the classical period as a 3 or 4 movement musical form with a duration of around 20 minutes. As the symphony developed in the Romantic period, the form dramatically changed towards a more unified structure. Symphonies that were thematically linked, Berlioz' Idée fixe, for example, evolved, and 4 movements became one continuous piece. The Romantic symphony often had a program or was inspired by literature leading to the tone. Gigantic works like the Symphonie Fantastique by Berlioz or Mahler's Symphony for 1000 are a few examples. This meant that the musical structures had to change. Familiar forms from the classical period, like sonata form, rondo, ternary, and variation form, all tended towards dramatic expansion in the Romantic period. The gentle confines of periodic phrasing from the classical period grew into lengthy, extended melodic expressions that soared across the new expanses of the developed forms. The Romantic period pushed the older musical forms to a breaking point, where they are no longer recognizable in some cases. The composers focused on fully expressing the richest emotions in the Romantic period, leading to the composition's detriment, which prolonged beyond the realistic possibilities of the musical material. While the Classical period remained tonal, even in Mozart's Dissonance Quartet, the Romantic composers eventually drove tonality towards destruction. Harmonically, the periods differ widely in this respect. Even though there are examples of highly intricate classical pieces, they do not come close to the intense chromaticism that underlies the works of composers like Wagner, Scriabin, and Schoenberg. In many of Wagner's compositions, the idea of a tonal center that dominated the classical models vanishes in a haze of transient harmonic movement. Arnold Schoenberg then took the next step and devised his harmonic system that completely dismissed tonal harmony. The gradual dissolution of the tonal framework that threaded its way through classical music began. Later, the works of Beethoven spanned across classical and Romantic periods and, in many ways, prepared the composers. This led to the development of his harmonic and structural innovations. The Romantic period will win if we judge the classical and Romantic periods in scale. The concertos and symphonies were demonstrations of excess and indulgence compared to the measured, concise classical pieces. However, if we look more completely at the music itself, then both periods produced remarkable works in their own right. The Classical period gave rise to the Romantic. In that sense, they are inseparable.